Good morning. Happy Sabbath.
Good morning. Happy Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath.
So a whole lot was shared. I think most of us were on the study. I don't know if I missed somebody. I think most of us were on there this morning. So what's the
I wasn't there. You know what? I don't know what I was thinking. I thought it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
yeah, that's right. I did see that you weren't there.
I totally kind of messed up on that. Oh my goodness.
You're-
Anyway, I have to watch that. I'll just listen to what everybody has to say. I honestly was thinking it was 3 in the afternoon. I didn't realize it was 3 a.m.
Been there, done that.
I know. Okay, so I'll just listen. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. He was following up on or continuing on with what he's been talking about with leadership, but first he had a bunch of questions. But I had some questions and I have them on my board, and I thought we'd go, this is gonna kind of go back to the previous one, so that'll help you, Donna. The questions that I have to go back to, and I'll just go ahead and pull up the board because that'll, and then we can work through it. Because he's talking a lot about leadership, right? And I think that, let me see if I can, hang on one second. Okay, he's talking about a lot about leadership. And the question that he was asked was, how are leaders selected? Is that right?
Yes.
How are leaders selected? So I have a question, because this is something else he's mentioned, but not in necessarily the last couple presentations, but a while back. He refers to people, how do I say? Yeah, he will say something like, ask an honest question. What does he mean when he says ask an honest question? Take that, the flip side, that means there must be a dishonest question, right?
Maybe he means your intentions.
Yeah.
So when you ask, how are leaders selected? Define that. What would you mean?
You mean honestly or dishonestly?
And,
If it's a dishonest question, I would think that the person has some kind of preconceived idea, sort of the way that when Jesus interacted, certain people would ask questions just to sort of trip them up. So they kind of already had in their mind what their opinion and idea was, but they were trying to call they're troublemakers. And that, I think, is a dishonest question. It might appear honest to observers, not knowing the motivation of the person asking the question.
So with that definition, how would you rephrase that question?
Well, you just have, what is an honest, right? What
No,
is
I mean,
Oh,
how are leaders
question.
selected? How are leaders selected? How would you, if it's a dishonest question, then ask it in an honest way?
I have to think about that. Because that could be an honest question.
It could be. When you listen to the whole thing in context, and you go back to Germany, and many people don't like the way leadership is set up, then how would you read that question?
I think they're trying to pin Parmenter.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I've never asked that question, so I wouldn't even know where to start to ask an honest question. But it just seems to me that people are not satisfied with Elder Parmenter. that was just my impression.
Yeah,
You-
it's
Go
almost
ahead.
like ask a question like that to leadership. What you're implying is that they're not doing, what they're doing is not they're not in agreement with what the leadership and how they're doing things. It's implied that when you ask a question like that.
Okay, and I went back to a couple of different, the last couple of presentations. I think it was the second one. I went back to the second one in Australia. And I don't know if anybody caught this, but because he's going,
Hold on. I'll talk after you're done, Elaine.
okay. He's referring back to Germany when they all voted, and a lot of them voted that they want to have a democracy and such. So, and then so in Australia, in that second one, he makes a statement and he says most people in the movement are sexist and wouldn't vote for him to be in place anyway. Did anybody catch that?
Well, that was
Yeah.
mentioned again today.
Yeah, was it? Okay, I might have missed it today.
Right.
Well, it wasn't worded exact. Well, yeah, because he was talking about many in the movement think it should all be women.
Yes, yeah, he did say it in that way too.
So if people think that it should all be women, does that make it sexist? So because it goes the opposite way, right?
I agree. That was the first thing I thought, Christine, is that it's sexist because feminist doesn't mean women. There are men feminists, and we're a radical feminist group. So we should all the more understand that.
Equality.
Equality, that was the next thing I was going to say. So yes, we're on the same page, I think, Christine, in our
Yeah.
thoughts.
So it shouldn't just be women, it should be men and women because that's equality. Maybe more
Right.
women, but not no men at all.
But even as he said, there were many men that were far more capable and doing a wonderful job than the women that they replaced them with. But they were trying somehow, I think those men that are so capable should mentor or help the ones who are put into those positions that might not be as capable, so that kind of like training wheels to help them, because we need equity, and the men have had a far greater opportunity than many of us to become far more advanced. But why should we lose their skills and their wisdom? I don't agree with that either. We need their skills and their wisdom. So there has to be some kind of way that we could balance the power.
Gender
struggle out.
neutral or merit.
Say that again?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I didn't want to interrupt you, Susan.
No, but you said something about gender neutral. What
Yeah,
was that?
general. I was looking at that study because I took notes on it. That was study number 2 from Australia, not this recent one, but from the previous one. And he spoke quite a bit on gender neutral and or merit. Well, merit is, what does merit mean? On the person's qualifications?
Yeah. the
Accomplishment. I always
ability.
think of a meritocracy too.
Yeah.
That's not right. And I've also thought about us as being grassroots in a sense. We were grassroots kind of in a sense. But if you look up grassroots movements, even they need a structure or they fall apart and die.
Yeah, it's true.
So there's not really an easy answer, but I think dismantling everything, like he says some people have possibly suggested, would create complete chaos.
Ava has her hand up. Hang on one second. I just want to give one thought here for people to consider, and then Ava talk, and then we can consider the thought afterwards. Because I've thought about that with the ones that are put in place, and there may be others that are more capable. It's different for us here in the United States generally. But picture Africa, for instance. How much ability to study and read your Bible do you think, and I don't know every region of Africa. So there's, it's probably different in different places. But what if you lived in a place where you as a woman, it's extreme patriarchy, you deal with the children, the family, and submissive and subservient and all of that, and you either don't have time to read or study, or maybe you're even not allowed or such, but you don't have the ability to advance yourself, but you find yourself in this movement. I don't know the conditions of everyone that was put into leadership. I'm just giving this as an example to think about. And so you are, and Susan touched on this point, so you are now, say, put in a position of leadership when somebody else is more qualified. And Susan commented on that maybe they should be a mentor. I don't know if that's the exact way to say it, but they should be, if all were to work perfect, I would think, then we would all respect the leading of God in doing this and then help one another. But imagine the battle that probably takes place from some women that were put into leadership positions, maybe less qualified, and what they have to, the resistance they have to deal with. So keep that thought. Go ahead, Ava. Ava?
Oh, I just wanted to go back a little for the dishonesty you were referring. I need to watch the last presentation because I really didn't. But in terms of that, I thought about, you know how sometimes people say in their conversation and they want to emphasize something and they'll say, honestly, saying, and then you can even joke about it and say like, honestly, what do you mean? Like you were dishonest before? You're not saying that honestly. And I know that you're emphasizing actually when you say that. You're saying honestly, right? Does everybody agree with what I'm saying? When people do that, when they speak and then they want to emphasize something that's very important, and then they'll say honestly, and then they'll say their point about what they're trying to convey to the other, right? Is that how I'm understanding when I hear other people speak that way?
I don't know if that pertains necessarily to this particular context, but I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so it's
here.
kind of like a figure of speech, right?
I've done it.
You've
And
done it. I think
yes,
we've all done it.
I have done it quite a bit. Maybe it's a bad habit to some degree, but often in my life, people, when I would make a certain comment, would look at me like I was making some kind of humorous comment, like they weren't taking me seriously. So I would emphasize, no, honestly, this is how I feel, right? When I'm expressing whatever it is that I'm expressing. So I have used that form of speech because I want people to know that's where I stand. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm not being humorous. That's my honest opinion. It could be honestly wrong, but it's my honest opinion. If that makes sense.
Right. So I'm saying that then you're emphasizing what you're saying, right? That's my point, that you're emphasizing. I think
Yes,
that's okay.
but
So that's how I look at it when he's
yeah,
saying those words.
but I could see
Alexander.
it being used wrongly also when you brought it up. I could see someone saying that to make what they're saying. You know how it's your actions that really show, not your words. And some people will say, this is just an example, so you'll understand what I mean. Like some people say, oh, I love you so much. I love you so much. but their actions don't show they love you. But you hear those words, you want to believe those words. And you'll sometimes ignore the actions and hear the words. So I think sometimes maybe people use honestly when they're beginning their statement to have you hear the words, but their behavior or their motivation is not honest, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so going back to what I'm saying about him saying those words, I think it's really just putting on your thinking caps and really reasoning to what he's really saying. So I agree with what Fel was saying earlier. That's my comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Ava, and everybody's input. Something else that I picked up in going back to the second Australia presentation as well, when he was asking Brendan if he was racist. If anybody remembers that dialogue that went back and forth. Something that he said is that he was, well, let me ask you this. What was the purpose of that conversation? What distinction was he making?
I use the word honesty, honestly, as we just talked about. Yeah, I would need to hear that study again, even more than 2 or 3 times, because as Eva just said, Elder Parmenter does not come out and just define everything he says. I mean, he does define, but as she said, he wants us to use our minds in interpreting what he is saying. And I have a difficult time with that. I mean, it's the way we learn, though. It's the best way to learn. So just to answer your question now, because you're bringing up the second study again, yeah, I'd have to hear it again regarding Brandon and his conversation, with sexism. Isn't that what it was about?
Well, he was making a particular, the best I understood it, seeking to make a particular point about racism and sexism when it came to the movement and external. Anybody pick up on what the point was that he was making?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I personally recall Brandon. What sticks in my mind, I think her name was Marilyn, because he began with that saying Marilyn wants everybody to know she's not sexist.
Yes, I remember that too.
That one sticks in my mind, but for some reason you might have to give more clarity to understand where you're going.
So Marilyn wanted us to know that she's not sexist. What was his response on that? If you follow through that conversation, if you remember. Did it matter?
Did what matter? What her suggestion, I believe, even though I'm struggling, all I can remember is that he showed her suggestion still had holes in it, but I can't remember now what if you have a better memory and you can state what she had said that she didn't believe was sexist. I think as Elder Parmenter reasoned through it, you could see there from cause to effect that it was still problematic what she had said. Even though I'm not calling her a sexist, I don't think even she realized that till he brought us through it, but I can't remember exactly how it was worded.
Susie Q has something on the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Susie has part of it, I believe, and she may have the other part, but I don't know that I understand it completely in the word choice, and I could be the one that's wrong here, but that it wasn't individual. Racism and sexism and I'll say how he said it, is that if you're racist or sexist in this movement is irrelevant for the individual. Okay, so if it's irrelevant, if an individual in the movement is racist or sexist, use the methodology to that and try to understand what's being said. If I'm an individual, I am an individual, you're all individuals, and I'm racist or I'm sexist, why is it irrelevant?
Because what he's trying to put the focus on, and I'm just going on the last, I missed this morning's. I wish I knew, because then I could have got I would have been able to watch it. I'm like, oh my gosh,
You'll
okay.
be able to, so.
What other part, this is just my thing, what other Parmenter was speaking about the last, the one previous to this, is that the focus is not on the individual, it's on the institutions.
Institutions.
Yeah, so that's what I got.
That's why I'm not completely sure that the way Susie put it was systematic. I'm not sure that that's, maybe that can be worked out to mean the same thing, but I see it systematic as different than the institution. Because there was another thing that he went on to say, I don't think it was today, it might have been today. Oh, thank you, Susie. It might have been today. Maybe it was this morning. But he said something about Trump, and I have it on the board, that Trump is not the institution. So what does that mean?
It's great that you're talking about this, because part of the study that I'm putting together for next Sabbath is examining culture even as an institution. Religion is a social institution. So collectively, we believe in a set of beliefs, values, which organize us. And and when we collectively all believe those same things and hold those same values, that is considered an institution, a social institution, not like a building, like many people think of an institution as a building, but it's a construct of a social institution.
So if you take this one here, Trump is not the institution. Trump represents, I hope I asked this right. Trump, what does Trump represent when it comes to, who does Trump represent? I don't know how to ask the question to get the right answer.
The far right.
Yeah, far right, but that's not I don't know how to ask the question that I want to ask. So we've got a movement, and then you have what's going on elsewhere. So Trump represents elsewhere, which is what?
Yeah, Trump is an individual, but he represents the institution.
Yes.
He's just the president, though.
So, but Trump we're considered in the movement, do you consider the movement as one thing and Trump as another? What's the distinction between the two?
Mary has a comment on the chat.
Thank you, Ava. Thank you. Yes, Mary, yes, they're forced to. So Trump is external, right? Right? He represents the external? Or
Yes, he
the
does.
external? Okay, so Trump's not the institution. Take that to the internal.
Logically, then, Elder Parminder is not the institution.
Right? So then, who is the institution?
Collective.
Yes, it's a collective set of beliefs and values that we all hold together collectively. And so if somebody as an individual doesn't internally believe that, because I'm thinking internal that way also, it's your mindset internally and what you're holding on to, what is in your heart and your mind. That is, does that make sense what I'm trying to
But
explain?
I have a question, because maybe I'm not understanding some of these myself correctly, but I have a question. What if collectively we are all still sexist and racist? We make up the
We're not in the,
so are we
then we're not in the
saying then
movement.
that the institution is sexist and racist because collectively we are? Well, according to what he said, most in the movement are sexist and wouldn't even vote him in. So if we went collectively and we're collectively sexist and racist, that means we make up the institution. And does that not mean then that the institution is sexist and racist?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes,
That is true.
yes, that's right.
So is that is collectively the right answer? When we ask who or what is the institution?
But collectively, it is, collectively can mean majority or the minority. I mean, there's more complicated than that, I think.
Yes, Bell's right.
But
And
for example, if you're a minority, but you have the power, the rest have to go along. So it's where the power, not just collectively, but I believe also where the power lies.
So hold that thought. Let's go over here for a minute. And
I have a question, Elaine.
yeah,
Is the institution, would you say it's the movement?
let's work on it. I don't know that I have the answer, but let's work it out.
If it's the movement, will we say it's the messages that has been developed since 1989? So we have to sort of come into align with the messages, not, I mean, we humans are all, feeble and weak, but if it's the movement, it's airtight, right?
Let's go over here for a minute first and work our way through this. At least the best way I understand it, and together, collectively, maybe we can work through it and come to the right conclusion.
Isn't there the baptismal vows? Shouldn't that factor into because that's something we profess to get baptized into this movement? Shouldn't that be part of the equation? Because we profess to uphold those vows, and those vows are pretty specific on theology and also the institution.
So the problem, but what I see the problem with the vows, though, it's the movement is progressive. The baptismal vows, I remember when I was studying with Aaron, the baptismal vows were, it's static. So what the baptismal vows then, I mean, I remember Aaron and I were discussing, well, okay, this doesn't apply. That doesn't apply because we've moved forward from the baptismal vows. And then I remember Aaron and I were trying to think, okay, how do we apply that to today? So I don't know if that's a real good example.
To take Mary's, the institution, the law, the Constitution set rules and regulations that govern and operates the collective.
Yeah, but also isn't the vows also to our Constitution, the United States?
Right.
Right?
So it's like the North Star, I guess, but you progress. But if you say, thus saith the vows, then we're, 15 years behind.
Well,
So-
I have a thought. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Donna.
This is a great, isn't this
It
wonderful?
might be something that you're gonna
Isn't
say
it
anyway,
all wonderful
maybe.
that we all have something to say? I mean, there's so many times you know, you go into groups and stuff and like nobody has anything to say. But anyway, a thought. I remember, you know, one of the previous Australian study that he mentioned about civil servants, and he likened the civil servants to priests, and he said that the main the strength of a government is in its unelected, it is in the unelected part, not the elected part. In fact, the elected part, like politicians and whatever else, that's the weak link in government. I don't know if you guys remember that one. I'm not sure.
No, it's in my notes to go there. It's in my notes.
Okay, good.
And this
Yeah,
is-
I remember that too,
and this-
Donna.
Um,
And he said it again in this study.
Yeah, and you know, the funny thing about it is I've never thought of the civil servants as the strength of the government. Have anybody? I never even thought of it, but you know what? When you think about it, it's true.
Exactly, they're unelected.
They're unelected. They've been, and of course he makes that example and compare it to the priests that we should do. They're multitaskers, you know, like we should do everything, you know, because the priests are the civil servants, and so and he likened that to Christ, you know, like who is that the priest, who's that example, and everybody was coming up with different, like Ezra, and I think somebody said Samuel or whatever, and he said he's just going to stick with Jesus as the perfect example. And I thought that was really awesome. I mean, that was a light bulb for me. I really thought that whole civil servant thing, that opened my eyes to that aspect of the leadership, you know, like the strength of a government, and then comparing it to the strength of this movement. You know, I don't know. Does anybody have a thought?
I want to take us over here, if we could. Some of you will remember, because I was thinking maybe it might help us. I don't know if it's right or wrong to do this because he didn't put names. There are times where he's mentioned names, and they did go through the names, but today he didn't put names. So maybe because they have put names there before, we can do that. In 2016, there were 3 people baptized. Who were they?
Elder
First of all,
Parmenter.
who's up here? First of all, who's up here? 2016.
Jeff
Remember?
Pippinger.
So who are the 3 that were anointed?
Parmenter, Marco,
Abo.
Ebo.
Teva, yeah.
Who was the one that didn't get there?
Was it Del Rosa? Am I saying his name right?
Yeah, Noel, right?
Noel, yeah, Noel.
Anybody know who he was talking about?
I'm guessing
What?
Mark.
Who?
Mark?
Yeah,
What's his
why?
last name? What was his last name? I forget.
Bruce.
Bruce, Mark Bruce, right?
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
So does anybody know, do you remember what he said when he didn't put the name there, but what did he say that person, who did he say that person represented?
I don't remember what he
Said
represented.
someone who was about to be removed.
Did he say it that way? That part, he might have, what I got was that this one was not selected. It was a premier teacher at the time. This was a premier teacher at the time. Anybody remember? Because Elder
There was
Parmenter,
there was a power struggle going
yeah,
on. Was
Elder
it power
Parmenter and him would literally be in the same place at the same camp meeting, speaking.
Yeah.
So did Bruce Mark not get along with Elder Jeff?
He was going out teaching
Yes,
on behalf of FFA. I don't know the fine details of that, but what I want to say is that he was a premier speaker in the movement. He's at the top. So if he's a premier teacher in the movement, then he's got to be teaching on behalf of him sending him. right?
But didn't the only, did Elder Parminder say the only reason why the three were selected was because Jeff liked them and they were good friends?
However it be.
And maybe Noel and Mark
So,
really
so
liked.
this selection process, he, let me get my notes. He refers to it as an unrighteous process, I believe is what he said. The selection process being, was it faulty? Was it wrong? It was an unrighteous selection process because 3 get chosen, 1 didn't get to be there, so he wasn't anointed. And 1's a premier leader, why was he left out? So what I'm trying to do is take my mind back to 2016, and I like him. And I'm watching these 3 get anointed, and I'm like, why isn't he anointed? I like him, he does a good job. So a leadership structure is being put in place, done righteously or unrighteously. And I'm just a member and I'm watching why my friend here doesn't get anointed. And I'm thinking, well, that's not very fair. So as a member, what am I saying when I say that?
Our leadership selected?
Am I in agreement with leadership or?
No.
Not at that time.
Not at that time. I did watch him occasionally, but definitely turned away, by the way. So he uses this example to show it as an, if I heard it correctly, an unrighteous, it was all done in unrighteousness. All done in unrighteousness. What did it accomplish?
A righteous purpose. Well,
How does God get God's will done
that's what.
when you're dealing with unrighteous, faulty, defective human beings?
Because look at what happened in spite or despite. Right?
You mean providence of God?
Can't hear you, Gloria. You're staticky.
Like providence, like
Yeah.
Noel Del Rosa was not able to make it. That's that's God's providence, right?
That's what I'm thinking. Was it providence? So if you fast forward to today, this is faulty and unrighteous. They're chosen because they're friends, they're close friends. This one's not chosen. This one doesn't show up. So neither one of them get to be a part of the party. But the 3 friends do. So did God accomplish their purpose?
I would say so.
So you fast forward to our time.
You can see where it's a test, though. It's a
Yes,
huge test.
absolutely.
Because you could stumble over, well, they're friends, and you could just not get that out of your mind.
So the leadership test, who are you going to follow, right? What side are you going to be on? Let's put it that way. What side are you going to be on?
And how is that going to affect the movement down the road? That's when you look back to see what happened.
Well, if this was a leadership test, right? I think we all agree with that. It was a leadership test.
Yes.
Yes.
It's chosen in a faulty way. Friends are being put in place. Premier speaker of the movement at the time is not chosen. And somebody else that providentially wasn't able to get there. And yet it seems that we can see it as a leadership test. correct? So now you
Yes.
got these three still here, plus this is grown. So you have these three, this one being now, I guess you would put here, correct? So you have that, and now you have this dishonest question. So how would you phrase that dishonest question? So how would you phrase how are leaders selected? What are you really saying? What's your real question?
Why are you picking your friends?
And maybe it's not even friends, so to speak. Why are you picking the people you pick? But you could be friends, because that was friends. But why are you picking the people you so why are you picking those people to be in leadership? Let's take it from there now. What are you really saying? Why are you picking those people? What am I really saying when I say that?
It sort of reminds me of the argument, we are all righteous. You know, on the test of leadership. Who made you the judge? We're all righteous, you know?
We're all holy.
We're all holy.
So if I ask the question, instead of saying, how are the leaders selected? Instead, what I'm really saying is, why did you choose that person? Now take it from there. What am I really saying?
Why didn't you pick me?
Why didn't you pick me? Because I'm holy too.
Isn't that
Or
back
why
to
didn't you pick me
Lucifer?
because I'm holy and that person isn't?
And that goes back to Lucifer's argument. You know, why did Christ get to have that role and not me?
So if most of the movement is sexist and racist, and that's irrelevant, what's relevant is the institution. Looking at what we just worked out here, what is the institution?
It's the principles of God. It's God's true character and principles.
What is God setting up?
The heavenly.
What are we a part of? We're part of the movement. Take that bigger. What are we a part of?
The heavenly kingdom, the host.
The kingdom of God, God's kingdom.
Sanctuary and the host. God needs a host.
So who's the institution?
Well, you could say God.
Is that correct? Does anybody have any
But you'd have to understand God and all his character.
so what happens if you don't? What happens if you're a part of
Well,
God's
then
kingdom? You're part of
your
this movement.
mindset, you'll be in this movement, but not of this movement. You could be a body in the movement, but your mind isn't in the heavenly realm. So it doesn't matter. God knows who his people are. God knows who his people are. I should say they. God knows who their people are.
Nice catch, thanks.
Thanks for not throwing tomatoes at me.
They didn't have any. So I myself, I don't know if it's completely accurate, but I've come to myself believe that when it talks to who's the institution, because if Trump is not the institution externally, as I think Fell said, then obviously then compare and contrast, Parmenter's not the institution. Right? So if Parmenter's not the institution, who is the institution? Who's guiding and directing things despite the frailty and faulty human beings that are in place?
God is guiding and directing.
So if this, we all decided, I think we all agreed this is a test of leadership over here.
Yes.
Right? Anybody disagree with that? I'll do like Parmenter did and assume that everybody's in agreement that this was a test of leadership.
I cannot say because I honestly did not watch the presentation from France. So in all honesty, I cannot have a verifiable opinion because I haven't watched the video myself.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
okay. You did watch Australia though, right?
Yeah, I did,
Okay,
but not the last one because
okay.
last one he's really going in depth. I know he talked about the vows. He talked about again emphasizing what is radical feminist, and up to date, no one has given him an answer to that, which makes me think that we are all confused, really. I mean, that we have like a little vague idea. I mean, we know about, women's rights and all that, like the basic, we know, but we still don't have, because if we want to go back a little bit about patriarchy, I know that Elder Parmenter and Elder Tess have talked about patriarchy encompassing a lot, way more than just women's rights and, LGBT rights. So it's human rights. And I'm sure it goes deeper than that. So obviously, we don't know what radical feminist means, really. So for me, that's why, changing the structure and just, starting from what Susan had mentioned earlier about chaos, if we're going to start from, scratch, it just doesn't make any sense to me. That's why it just looks chaotic right now, because people cannot answer basic questions and you want to organize. So that's why I'm just stressed.
I really appreciated that you reminded me when you said that, Ava. I really appreciated the simplicity with how Parmenter stated that about when the Adventist Church, A.T. Jones went to Congress and argued against the Sunday law. It wasn't a matter of just that day of worship. Elder Parmenter, huh?
It was human
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And he made that so simple. And you can see it, so clearly.
Trying to force a day.
Mary has a comment. Mary has a comment on the chat.
Thank you. God is the leader of this kingdom. The movement being a sample or representative of God's kingdom. So while in 1888, they wanted to force Sunday, A.T. Jones was arguing for what?
Human rights, because it's the same argument that you're seeing now. They want their freedom to worship their religion, right? Which is unfair to human rights. The things that they're enforcing that they claim are for their God and their belief system, like the case with Masterpiece Bake Shop or L3103, whatever that is, creative. They're taking away other people's rights. So it's about human rights, not religion necessarily. It's about a belief system. Again, it's the social belief system and values that people uphold. That is their ultimate institution. Does that I'm trying to make that clearer, but maybe I'm not making it clear enough.
You're fine. A.T. Jones had a particular argument, though. Does anybody remember that particular argument?
Do you mean that?
Wait, to me, I understood that
No.
time ago.
Do you mean because he said if we wouldn't put in a Sabbath law because
Exactly.
right. So he was showing both sides of opposite sides of the same coin. Each issue, even though one was Sunday issue, one was Sabbath issue, they were still the same issue. opposite sides of the same coin, and
Right.
it would still be against human rights.
Right.
So it's
That's
equality
why-
over freedom.
So that's why you can see in 1888, the issue was
Yes,
over
Jackie.
equality. The issue was equality, not Sabbath.
Exactly. Equality over freedom.
You could see the issue of equality in the Millerite history.
Yes, it's
came
always
to
been
slavery.
equality.
What?
Isn't that so true? It's always been equality.
It's always been equality.
God,
Sabbath just identifies
government
you.
never changes.
Sabbath just identifies you as it's as belonging to God's kingdom. I don't know how else to say that right off the top of my head. So then okay.
I think
so-
Jackie said it.
10 Commandments, because the 10 Commandments are eternal. Just like some of our vows. Like I had the same experience Phil did when studying with Aaron. And the more I've come away and thought about it, the more I've thought some of those vows remind me of the ceremonial vows that were nailed to the cross. Because when people, you'll hear Christians say the 10 Commandments were nailed to the cross, but no, it was the ceremonial laws that were nailed. The 10 Commandments are forever. So that was just a thought.
So
Yeah, Jackie said it. I want Jackie to repeat what you said, Jackie.
Yes, I said it's equality over freedom and those issues that in A.T. Jones's time. Well, and I was going to bring out too about the Millerite movement and what was the Sabbath an issue then? It came, yeah, go ahead.
well, I'm just
That's
gonna
a
say
question.
that that would be a whole nother discussion because I want to try to incorporate some of that into like with the Islam study as well.
Yeah.
Later. Because we know that they did not recognize. Actually, we're going to talk. I have no planned notes, so you might have to remind me of that question, Jackie.
I will.
because
Interesting.
I do want to go back and look at how did we get to 1989 and not know anything about radical Islam? So just keep that thought for when we meet.
Yes. I'll write it down. I don't
Well,
know
there
that
you
I'll
go.
remember it if I don't.
That's a
So I
good
do have
question.
Go ahead.
No, that's a great question, what you just said. That never occurred to me. So thanks for having me think about it.
So are we in agreement that the institution, if Trump is not the institution, and compare and contrast, then Parmenter's not the institution, then who is the institution? Are we in agreement that it's God's institution?
Yeah.
Yes, God.
Is the
Trump
institution?
is the apis bull. Trump is the apis bull.
So is the institution sexist or racist?
So
It can't be.
since Trump
It can't be.
Trump is the apis bull, so does that mean that it's the apis bull? Are you saying that Elder is the apis bull?
I didn't
Trump
say
is
Apis
the
Bull,
apis
you
bull.
did. Yeah, I'm not even talking about Apis Bull right now.
No, but that's what Trump represents.
Yes, correct. But we're looking at a different, I guess I could say a different story at this point anyways. Yes, he's part of the whole Apis Bull institution. Because we're looking at the institution itself.
Castor
Well,
and Pollux.
So
That's
it would,
Castor and Pollux.
so your question, Elaine, would be which institution are we talking about? Because I think we're talking about two separate institutions. We have God's government, our institution, this movement, and then we have the world's government, which is Satan's institution.
Correct.
What was your question again, Elaine, in relationship to what Phil just said?
So if we've decided that the institution, it's God's kingdom, God's institution is the institution, the internal institution, is it sexist or racist?
No, 'cause
No,
God can't be. that
neither
those-
one.
But yet the individuals can be and many are, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's what Alder Parmenter was alluding to months back, even in our camp meeting that we had, was that there are people whose bodies are here, but they're not with us. They're here in body, but they left us a long time ago.
That's the point that he was making with Margaret in Australia, I think, you know.
You mean Marilyn? I
Oh,
think her
yeah,
name's
sorry,
Marilyn.
Maryland. Because she was saying that the institution, the people are part of the institution. And if the people are sexist and racist, that implies that the institution was sexist or racist. But he made that point really clear that it was not, that was not the issue. I mean,
Yes, Donna, you're correct, and you're
Right.
helping me remember that too. And
Right.
so he showed that her reasoning
that's right. That's
was
how,
actually sexist,
right,
even though
exactly.
she may
Mhm.
not,
Even though,
hopefully she understands that now.
and
but-
that was the point that he was making, because they started off the study with Marilyn wants to say she's not sexist and racist. And then at the end of that discussion, we realized that, that was all being proven, that individuals can be sexist and racist, but it doesn't mean that the institution or the movement or God's kingdom is sexist or racist just because the people are sexist or racist. That kind of the whole thing.
Going
Yes,
over
and
that-
nobody wanted to vote. Remember that? He asked for hands.
Yes, nobody wanted to say anything.
Nobody, because we're friends with one another and nobody wants to speak
Nobody wants to say that.
badly about anyone else.
Right. Nobody does. No.
Go ahead,
I
Jack.
have a comment to make, but I'll let you go ahead. Elaine, you're going to say something.
Yes, I was, but it blew.
Yeah, wait. I mean, you were trying to make a point there.
It was
Um,
based on what Donna said, and maybe I can bring it back to me, but
I-
with Maryland and going back to the point of it being irrelevant. Go ahead, Jackie. If it comes
Well,
back to me, I'll
I think this,
cut you
this
off or I'll write it down. I'm sorry.
I think this is what Donna was saying, but even, what the conversation has been here right now, I'm thinking about, let me get this. Because the institution is still not a pure radical feminist institution, correct?
But if
We're
God
not
is the
pure. We're not
institution,
pure. We're not
God is
pure.
the institution.
Yes, because God is, but we represent God here on this earth. His kingdom, his people, his movement represent God's kingdom, what God is like. Right? So, and we know, I'm not sure who brought it up, maybe Susan, but we know that Elder Parmenter showed us at our camp in California, especially, that there are those within the institution, but they don't leave because they had nowhere to go. So I was thinking of Matthew 13. The reapers are the angels, right? They're getting ready to reap the harvest. It's not the people that are reaping them. And we are only observers in the movement. We're not there to point out who's not a radical feminist and who is, and who isn't righteous and who is righteous. That is not our job. We're just onlookers, observers, as the word was used. So it's starting to define more and more in my mind what God's institution looks like and what our job function is.
But Jackie, don't the servants recognize the fruit?
We did talk about that, yes.
So they
But
will
we can't pluck them
recognize
out. There,
who,
that's not our job to pluck them out, though.
but they do recognize as they observe
Yes.
the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And just to add to the
Just
distinction,
recognizing, I want to make sure I understand. So basically you're saying we recognize them, but we don't pluck them out. So we just
That's right.
observing. We're observing. We don't do, anything about it.
Yes, even
Okay.
if we know that, it does, they might not be true or whatever you want to say.
Right.
That's not our job to say, hey, that person over there isn't living up to God's kingdom here.
And
That's judging, but yeah, I don't want to go too deep into that because that's not our
another
job.
study.
right. And just
Yeah,
like
it's another
I
study.
wanted to repeat a little bit of what Susan was saying, that the head is out there and the body is in here. So you're referring basically to the enemy within the gates, right? Because that was the term I think he used, right, Susan? You would equate that with what you said? The
So I
body's there,
hadn't
but the
thought
head.
about it like that, but I was thinking internally the way our mindset is to what God, how we're coming up to the ideal that God wants in us, right? And so that way internally I was thinking for us.
Okay.
But you're right. On another level, yeah, the enemy is within the gate
Mhm.
because
Okay. Yeah.
yes,
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that I was listening. I mean, I was hearing what I thought I was hearing. Okay. Thank you.
I appreciate all the comments here. I just want to comment on Elder Parmender's beginning prayer where he says, let us not focus in our faults or the other faults, but go where the truth lead us. So he is really just, encouraging us to go where God's kingdom is. Yeah. So
amen.
I
Gloria.
wrote down as
Amen.
part of that, Gloria, align us with your will.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're
Amen.
praying to align us with God's will, flip that around. What are we saying?
Not our own will, but God's will.
Yes. If we're praying, align us with your will, then where are we?
In God's
God's kingdom.
I looked at that myself. Align me with your will is saying, help me because I'm not. Is that why he prayed that?
I agree with you.
Yes, agree.
I think he's being very humble, and cooperation. This is a teamwork. He can't do this on his own. So it's radical feminism. Yeah.
In that particular prayer was a corporate prayer, right? In other words, the movement, align us, your people, this movement, align us with your will, not an individual, right? Mary says, so the movement's cut out from the mountain. The 144,000 is not sexist or racist, but it is possible to have sexist or racist individuals within the 144,000. The parable of the wedding, those without the garment will be thrown out. I think we are to be aware of these individual dynamics and to be watchful. Yeah, I have notes on that when he was talking about the 144,000 too, or as well. Let me think about where I had that at. But go back to this, what Donna said, that I couldn't remember what it was. Maybe somebody could remember the conversation, the dialogue in it. Because if the institution is sexist and racist. I think he gave a reverse example, and then I'm trying to still process that in my mind, remember it and process. So I don't think I have it remembered correctly or fully. He gave the example of working in a restaurant and somebody serving you. Anybody remember that?
Yes.
Go ahead, if you can.
I vaguely remember even that the server doesn't like the person because of race or gender or color or whatever, they still have to do it because it's, can't remember the reason, but I remember him saying they still have to do that. They still have to serve.
Okay. Because I was kind of on
It's
that.
their
with the-
job function.
I was kind of on that with the thought of this movement. He said, he made several points. Sorry, Donna, you missed it yet, but you'll catch up to it quick, I'm sure. That I could resonate with in my own history. Many of these things are a choice, and this will go to, is it Ava? Somebody just brought up the 144,000. Whoever just brought that up. Gloria, maybe. I can't remember. Sorry, I apologize. But correct me. if I'm-
Mary,
Mary.
Mary.
No, it was somebody that spoke, and Mary's in the chat. So yes, Mary did, but it was somebody else too. Sorry. It was somebody that spoke, and I can't remember who said it. Yes, I read Mary's quote. He brought up something that resonated with me when it came to the word choice. And I might go sideways here a little bit, and maybe we'll circle back around. I'm not sure if I don't lose my place here. Going back to the teachers. The
Yeah.
discussion- Huh?
Remember he was talking, I'm going back to Australia. I think it's the first presentation. I hope I'm not going off on a thing, but he spoke about, as I remember, he was speaking about that the priests are teachers. And then he mentioned about there's only like 20% that are actually teaching, and there are 80% that are not engaged or whatever. And and then he leads into these institutions and how people, how people have this, but I think he's trying to engage everybody because he's trying to teach us, this is what I'm getting. We all have a responsibility as teachers, and then it shouldn't be 20% doing, all this work and 80%. I mean, when he said 80%, I was like, wow. And he's trying to, engage everybody and let everybody know what our position is, what our responsibility is, and to step up. I think that we need to be engaged. If we've sat on the sidelines or whatever, that now is the time for everybody to be motivated and to be part of this institution, this kingdom, this, because we all are important. I don't know how to say it.
I think that I want to say it's like you're being the observers, right? Kind of like you're being the observers when you're supposed to be working.
We'll give the example that he gave. I'm pretty sure that Ava said she didn't see it yet either. The one that just took place this morning for us 3 a.m. Mary and Martha. He gave the example of Mary and Martha. What did he say about the work that Martha was doing? What did he say about the work that Mary was doing?
Well, I think what Martha was doing, yeah, she did a lot of work, but it was inconsequential. And I can't remember the specific word that he used for Mary.
Needful?
But for Martha, it was not important.
She did what was needful?
Needful.
Is that the word he
Yeah,
used? That's the
people
word
that want to help
I
but
think that's
don't
the word
want to
that Jesus
teach.
uses.
He said, there's people in the movement that say, I don't want to teach. but I will help in other ways. I think he was equating that to Martha.
So you'd have to look at Mary and Martha as a parable to determine the work today. You take the literal, and Martha's busy doing all the making sure everybody gets fed, right? Correct. Mary's work will never be taken away. So Martha receives Jesus into her home. Mary sits at Jesus' feet and learns. Martha is busy making sure being the hostess of the mostest, right? But Mary did what was needful. Martha was taking something and receiving. Everybody remember the third word? She was taking something and receiving. I don't remember the third word.
Was it giving?
It might have been giving. Might have been giving. I know I wrote it down, but it's just a matter of where I wrote it down at. Thought I even underlined it, but maybe I didn't. I think it was giving. But anyways, what she did have would be taken away. Right?
He did say, Elaine, that Martha was doing unimportant things.
Yeah, unimportant things.
And Mary chose the better part.
So go to the 144,000. What he did go back to Daniel 12:10. We've heard this many, many times that Daniel 12:10. We have defined the wise as teachers, and the 144,000 are teachers. So if you have 20% that are teaching and 80% that are not, who are the 144,000?
20%.
But yet they don't enforce anybody to teach. Why?
It's like the laws you can't force because the person's heart is not changed. It can't, making someone adhere by force does not change their character. It only makes them go along, but they're going along without the eternal truth being written upon the heart. They're going along outwardly, not inwardly. So force can make a population look like it's functioning, but it's unnatural.
I think also, didn't he talked about people now being able to teach, like they can use the PowerPoint, or what means they have of being able to teach. Like it's not going to be a perfect, I remember him saying about being patient with other people that are not up to the level of others teaching.
Correct.
I remember him saying and emphasizing that, to give an opportunity to those people. So I think that definitely will reach a group that, feels too shy or incompetent, whatever you want to call it. They don't have the courage to do, to go up there because of they need to learn too. But I know that you also learn when you teach, not just, listening without practice. So you have to practice. Oh, I want to go back to Martha a little bit. Regarding Martha, I just picture Martha being one of those persons that is busy with everyday kind of thing, which I know that Jesus was pointing at her busyness being unimportant because she wanted to feed Jesus, right? If we think about like basic stuff, like she was worried about, the house being clean, everything being organized, orderly, whatever, and the food ready and all that. But Mary chose the best part because she wasn't eager to eat but Jesus's words, which represent the food, the real food, like the manna. So I can see that why Mary chose the best part, and nobody was going to take that away from her. And then and then Martha was complaining because, think about it. If she would have taken away Mary from Jesus, then she wasn't even going to get fed by Jesus. Like, because Martha was doing the unimportant things. That's how I'm looking at it.
So what would you define a principle in that story? What principle would you pull out of that story?
You're asking me?
Anybody?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll wait for somebody else to answer that and I can talk later.
Eat the little book.
Eat the little book. When you say that, life goes on. We have all our stuff we have to take care of. What do you mean, eat the little book then? We're busy people. We all have a lot to do.
Yes, we are. That is true. But my prayer always, like in the morning, when I start my day, is like moment by moment, right? We die to selfishness and pride. Moment by moment, we crucify the flesh, crucify the lower passions with all, its animal propensities. So to me, eating the little book, eating manna, is whatever that I might be doing. I always try to remember, being careful with my thoughts, my words, my habits, and being careful to align with the kingdom of God, regardless of what I'm doing. And that's what I mean by eating the little book. Now, am I always successful? No. But I try to make a conscientious choice, using a slow brain to do good, to do right.
He connected that the person's question, quoting Elder Parmenter, that the 144,000 are all required to be teachers. He was quoting the questioner, whoever the questioner was, they were quoting Elder Parmenter that all of the 144,000 are required to be teachers. And then brought in, that questioner brought in, what about Martha? What about those that don't want to teach? What can we glean from that?
Can we say, Elaine, from your question, what principle? Isn't that Mary was doing the internal and Martha was doing the external?
Maybe
And the
what
external
Martha,
she's
maybe
doing
it had
wasn't,
to do with priorities, because you have stuff you have to do. We have lives that we have to live, and maybe Martha could be looked at as prioritizing that stuff over what is needful. Susie's comment, what Martha was doing had its purpose, but there are more important things. Seek first the kingdom of God. So, because he related that to teaching, because the person's question was, what about the Marthas? So what does he teach? What does he want us to pull from that? That he's connecting the teachers are the 144,000. We get that from Daniel 12:1 that the teachers are the wise ones and the teachers are the 144,000. And you only have 80, you have 20% that are teachers. So does that mean that 20% equal Mary,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And that means that 80% equal Martha. Now what does that look like?
Like God is whittling down Gideon's army.
Would it mean that Mary's a teacher?
Yes,
Taking what he was
yes.
So Mary would represent the teachers. And Martha represents the 80% that are not teachers, right?
It's almost like another test, you know, like how God had Gideon test them. And the group kept getting smaller and smaller. It's like another test.
And what is the criteria for teachers? Because it's based, I know, on, Elder Parmenter brought this up, on your talents. Do you have one talent or do you have 10 talents? And that, what is God developing in each one of us to be able to use that talent in the teaching capacity? And I look at it as it's being developed in each one of us. To me, I could be wrong, but it's not a black and white. Okay, now we've only got 20% in the institution that are doing anything. I don't know if anyone has any comments on what I'm saying, but you know,
I
that
think it's deeper than
it
that.
sounds very restrictive.
Well,
I
Yes,
mean,
Jackie,
it
I
can
think it's
boil
deeper.
down to a judgment. Okay, somebody's not giving any teaching. They're not standing up and teaching. So now they're part of the 80%.
So if we look at it,
I was gonna say Donna then, so go ahead, Donna, sorry, that was what I was gonna say.
if we look at it, the way he was explaining, at least one way to look at it is the way he was explaining the civil servants. And that the teachers are the civil servants of this, of God's kingdom, God's institution. And what are the civil servants? What are
They're
civil?
the ones unelected.
They're the unelected, but what else are they?
To the strength.
They're the strength of the organization, the institution. So he likened civil servants as priests. So the priests are the strength. That 20% is the strength of God's kingdom. Of course, he would like that percentage to be higher, of course, but that's the civil servants in God's kingdom. That's just one way to look at it.
Yeah,
In looking
that's a
at it
good
this
point.
way,
Mary has in the chat a good comment, and
Oh.
Susie Q.
yeah, I'll get there. If you look at it this way, who's triumphant?
Mary.
Mary,
But Jackie,
yes.
every time you share, everything you share, when I've heard you and all your input, that's like teaching. It you know, you're helping share what you are internalizing. That's teaching.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. It gives me courage.
I agree with you, Susan.
You too, Gloria.
Phil's got a comment.
so I'm not sure when and what study it was. So, and this is in regards to teaching. Maybe the study was 2 years ago, perhaps. That's when he first I realized, when Elder Parmenter was talking about, we're going to be teachers, right? We're going to be teaching Abraham. We're going to be teaching Moses with 144,000. You know, he's going to be teaching, you know, the greats of the ancient times. And so as this study and the discussion about teaching comes, you know, as it's progressing, it's like I'm thinking to myself, what do I say to Moses? You know, what do I say to Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived? You know, how do I teach Abraham, who was a friend of, you know, a friend of God? I mean, we're talking about great ancient, you know, people that we have to teach. And if you think about it, like I thought about it, it's a daunting task. And not just the information, but the stature. Because we see these people as giants of faith, right? God's friend, Abraham. And it's not just maybe it is just simple as having the confidence of being able to say, you know, that we have something to offer to these great people. And that in itself, I think it's a, but you know, we're being used by God to be their teacher, you know, teach Daniel, David. And to me, it is not only a privilege, but it can be scary. So, you know, I better learn, you know, if I want to be the part of 144,000, if I want to be a teacher, if I want to teach others about what radical feminist equality looks like, I better do a good job learning here so that I could be useful to God, that I am of some value in God's kingdom. And I believe we also learned that, wasn't it Lucifer's job to teach Adam and Eve? And, you know, that would have been a privilege, but Lucifer didn't see that as a privilege. And so he lost that position. So I believe that we all should see what our job roles are as teachers, because, you know, we're going to be using slogan, we're going to be using rhetoric, we're going to be using ethos, pathos. What are the other two? Logos. And there's one more, right? Right place, right time, right words. So I think it would behoove us to, every one of us, to be good teachers and practice.
Do the needful things. Study
Yes.
and prepare and be able to give it.
I agree with that, Val. I think Christine has a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Christine.
Was Jesus teaching us equality by showing Martha and Mary and everyone around that they had the right to be there, not being in the kitchen, but sitting there at his feet listening? Showing us
I think it was
equality?
Mary that put in the chat as well a minute ago that
Did she? I
not
didn't,
that
I'm
Mary
sorry.
went help ask Lazarus to help.
Right, that's correct. Yeah.
And
Martha, I'm sorry.
I'm going on.
Mary in the chat said Martha didn't ask Lazarus to help. Just,
Right,
I know I said that wrong.
right. And so Martha was choosing the patriarchy, but Jesus was showing the equality.
Right. I agree with that. Just kind of chiming in off of what Fel said. Don't quote me, but I think in Australia, and before I say this, I just want to say that I consider everybody, especially in this group, a contributor, whether if you're teaching or if you're just making comments. And like Susan said, I learned tremendous on just listening to what other people say. I mean, it puts light bulbs up in my head when people say things, and I really am appreciative. So before I say this, I just want to say that I don't discount, contributions from all of us, even if it's not a literal teaching. However, I remember that Elder Parmenter in Australia say that he didn't consider making comments or, knowing about what's happening in the world or whatever, and sharing that. He didn't consider that teaching. And so he's really, like Fel was saying, it is difficult and it is scary. Well, it's scary to teach. Trust me, it's just terrifying. But for me, and probably all the teachers that teach can probably testify that it's always the momentum before you have to actually teach that is so terrifying. And then once you are doing it, it gets easier. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, and you're just focusing on the study. So then you're not focusing on all the, the nervousness and all that. So what Fel was saying, the practice is important, because just like what Elder Parmenter was leading to, is like you can talk and share, and that's part of all of us, and that's good, but that's not like teaching. It's not the same thing. And so it does push us. And then even what Mary was saying, all of us have different gifts and we have different talents, is true. And we're never really truly going to know what they are until we actually motivate and do whatever it is that you think. And anything and everything when you start anything new, it's always going to be terrifying. It's always going to be scary. Always. There's never one thing that you do brand new that you just have total confidence. But even just if you have to learn with someone, just one-on-one, and try to see how it feels and get used to it. I think Elder Parmenter is wanting all of us to be civil servants and to be priests that are the strength of this movement. We can't just look to him. He's not done. He's not Donald Trump. He's not. It's all of us collectively makes up this movement, God's kingdom, and we all have some valuable talents, gifts, whatever, to offer. And so I think that he wants everybody to be engaged and in whatever capacity that, of course, never to cause anybody trauma, of course, never to do that. But, it does take a stretching of a person. It does. And it is not pleasant. It is not. I don't know if it ever gets pleasant. I don't know. Maybe Elaine can share some of hers, because she's been doing it so much. And, do you, like Elaine, do you get nervous every time you present before, maybe? Do you feel?
No, it's just us.
Yeah, I know. You're right. You're right.
My first time to have to go outside our group was in Portola one time. And as soon as I only had a week, I think, when I was told I needed to do it.
Oh.
And we were working on Brazil School of the Prophets classes. And so I had material, but I had not done that before, and had not been, other than on Zoom. I think it was recorded as well. And I was really terrified. And I just told myself, I had to tell myself that week, I'm not here for me.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
people out there that I knew at the time that didn't see the distinction between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton prophetically.
Mm,
And so I had to, I had to pray a lot about it because I had to realize that it's not about me.
yes,
Me going up there being scared was making it about me.
right.
It didn't mean that I wasn't, but it was making it about me. And I had to make it about those that I knew were not seeing the distinction prophetically between Clinton and Trump.
Yes.
And so when I got started, yes, I was really scared. But then once I got going, then I just kind of got lost in what I was saying. I don't mean lost in what I was saying, but I mean
The focus was on,
absorbed in what I was saying. And
right.
so then I didn't think about the rest.
Yeah, well, I'm so comforted in hearing that because I look at you as a pro and I'm going,
No,
I wonder if she even gets those nervousnesses, you know?
I don't want to teach in front of certain people. So
But I agree with you. I feel very comfortable with this group. Like I totally feel comfortable because I love everybody. Not that I don't love everybody else in the movement, but I'm just not, you know, I don't know them as well as I do everybody. And just, you know, it's just, we just feel comfortable with each other. Thank you for sharing that. I'm very comforted in that. Thank you.
I get scared I'm going to say the wrong thing, but I'm really trying to focus on some of the things that Elder Parmenter has said over the last few weeks about not being so afraid of making mistakes and really sitting back and trying to understand what he's trying to say. And if you go back to 2012, and he's making a prediction on time, certainly not the first time he said something that was beyond what Elder Jeff probably understood or taught, right? But he gets disfellowshipped. And I was going to bring that point up here too. So he gets disfellowshipped, but he wasn't afraid to speak and ask questions. And there were others that spoke and studied with him that spoke and asked questions. And it's in working through, like I might have a really bizarre question. I don't mean it to be a dishonest question, maybe complete ignorance. And don't understand, or I completely wrongly understand something and I've got this wrong question. I don't consider myself great with methodology myself personally. I don't trust myself. There are things that I do understand in it, and then there's challenges. I feel like I'm kind of finally coming into a little bit more clarity as we continue to move forward. But imagine back then, if you don't have any of these tools, they have the tools and we're developing them, but we don't have any of those tools. And you're asking questions, and they might be, it goes back to my childhood being told to shut up. That's not even funny. In other words, I was immediately shut down what I had to say was anything important, and it was out of ignorance or what have you. But gathering together and asking those questions with the tools will either prove your question to be accurate or prove your thought, what have you, to be correct, or the methodology is going to prove it to be incorrect, which is what you want to know anyways. And it can be a very humbling experience as you continue to go through the process to then learn and grow. You grow by doing that. So it's kind of helped me to back off as I'm working on the Islam studies, to not be so afraid to ask some questions that might seem, out of line. So I'm just trying to understand. And I think that we all need to do that. And Bell has his hand up.
Yeah, so I think we need to address, somebody had a question about English, non-fluency in English. I can't remember who that person was. I think maybe it was Mary. But I think we need to address that question.
Read the question if you would, because this doesn't sound familiar, like I missed that one, and I'm trying to read them all, but it's hard.
Something about English not being your first language, or
What's the
fluent
last
in
one
English.
here? I see it. I see it.
Are they
Responding to Mary, or wait, oh no, I don't see Mary's question. She's responding. It's Susie responding to Mary.
Yeah. So basically the question was, if you're not fluent in English, are you disqualified in in teaching in account of not being fluent in the English language.
I don't know why you would be.
Yeah, I would have to say definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to address that. Say definitely not, disqualified. And I've seen some comments also in the chat about being afraid. Let's see, being nervous. Where's that? Okay. But I've seen some chats about being nervous and being afraid and terrified. And I think one of the things that we need to look at in Elder Parminder's older presentations. I mean, we haven't talked about it much, but he speaks a lot. Because I've been looking at like from the 2017 messages, his presentations. Being confident in knowing the Miller's rules. He talked a lot about that, and even Miller, 14th rule. Because he has 14 rule of interpretation, and number 14 to me, Elder Parminder's, Elder Parminder uses number 1 and 5 a lot, and Ellen White mentioned 1 through 5, and what Elder Parminder uses is 1 and 5 a lot. And to me, lately, what I find also more important is number 14, having the faith of what you're learning, what you're teaching, and what you're presenting. So I think if we go back in our own time, if we go back to the Miller's 14 rules, I think that would give us confidence. Also, the more we learn about parable methodology and what the methodology is all about, and then applying it to our teaching, that would also give us confidence, because that's what I've been doing on my own time. Just like kind of like that, when I presented the donkey and what is it, Balaam. You putting that as parallel methodology and putting that on the line and just kind of presenting it as a class and have a discussion on it. That increases the confidence and the methodology. So I think if we put all things together, we'd be less terrified, less nervous, and we would have more confidence.
Yes, and also too, I wanted to add, that's true, Phil. Also too, I wanted to add that, if you just go with the mindset of, I'm going to make mistakes, that's just what's going to happen, and it's okay. It's okay to say a wrong thing. It's okay to not be perfect. In fact, I would say don't try to be perfect, because if you do, you may never start. You may never, ever do anything. It just realize that, it's okay to say a wrong thing and backtrack and go, oh, oops. And, it's okay. Like for a long time, I always felt like very nervous about even making a comment, because I would say, well, what if I say the wrong thing? Or what if I, mess up? Well, guess what? We're all human. We're all going to say something that maybe we didn't mean to say. And then we can always go, oops, I'm sorry, that was a mistake or whatever. And if we just come to when we teach, just realize that we're not perfect and we don't have to be perfect. We just have to present in whatever way comes natural to us or comes most comfortable to us, that we don't have like this absolute 100% standard that we have to be a certain way. I think if we do that and we just present the way we feel most comfortable, that is success. That is success. And if we, as
as the audience and as students, when we're listening to people teach, if we can remember that we're all learning, and that before we say something that could possibly throw a wrench in the gears to someone and they're teaching, just, be more conscious and be more graceful when we say things, and try to learn how to say things in ways that may not discourage others from speaking out or to sharing their inputs and things. I think if we keep that in mind, that makes it easier. None of us have any expectations of anybody. We just want to hear your voice, and we just would like to see what you're thinking. If we have come with that mindset, I think it might be a lot easier for all of us. And I'm learning too, to speak more and to not be afraid to say the wrong thing, which in some senses is good, because then you're not just flippantly just talking, and you're really thinking about what you're saying. That's a good thing. But at the other end of that spectrum, don't be afraid to share, even if it might be something that may not be correct in people's eyes. That's okay. None of us are perfect. And we're all, everybody is forgiven and whatever, it's just being comfortable with each other. And like being a family, when you're in a family, I didn't learn this in my family, but I had friends that were closer to me. They were my family. I could say anything, and I knew that they would never persecute me, make me feel bad. They were never. And the funny thing about it is, most of these friends were, they weren't even Christians. And I used to ask myself, I said, wow, how come the non-Christians are more gracious and loving than the Christians, So we can just be gracious with others, and just have mercy and grace on everybody, especially when we see people doing their hardest. And it's a joy, actually, to see people do things that are new for them. I'm excited about that.
It also helps to sprout growth a little bit better than criticism.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
been there,
I,
done it.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And remember that this is a safe place. This is where we learn. This is where we edify one another. We don't put each other down. And we make a mistake, then I'm sure that we can graciously correct one another, and we can graciously accept the correction. Like, still when we talk about God, we still have we still say he and he, we still say that. And that's a habit that we all have to get rid of, but we don't jump on each other rudely. It's just a reminder that, I mean, it's hard. It's a difficult thing, but we give each other grace. It's a safe place.
Amen.
This one, not this one. Good.
I was thinking about what Donna said about art, or when she was talking about teaching, I was thinking about art when she was saying that we don't have to be like certain people that we've watched and conform ourselves to the way that they teach. And the reason I was thinking about art is when I took an art class, many of us were afraid to draw because we wanted it to look like perfection on our first drawing. And it's never the case. And you stifle your creative processes and the enjoyment of just doing the art by trying to conform to something. So it's easier if you freely flow with it and into it and develop your own artistic or creative nature. And teaching is so much like that, because when I first started just regular teaching, right, you look, and I don't even mean like in this format. This format always intimidated me because it was so like the way Elder Parmenter is. He's so composed. I twitch. I make expressions. Sometimes like I hate watching the way that I look. And Elder Parmenter, my hands flail when I talk, and I think I'm so not composed. And Elder Parmenter is so composed, and he can sit there with his hands together, and he can articulate so perfectly. And I thought, oh, I can't be that. It reminded me of that initial art, trying to draw and wanting to be that Elder Parmenter, right? But like Donna was saying, we each have different character qualities, and if we can kind of sort of allow ourselves to experience the journey of this teaching and be, and I don't know how to say what I'm seeing in my head, but it's a process, and the more we relax when we're able to be ourselves and not focus on trying to be like Elaine or trying to be like
Try to
Emma
be like me
or,
or Dale.
or anybody that we watch that way. And then I was also thinking another one of my problems is because I've always been so self-conscious, right? That people are going to be seeing all my faults. I'm so self-conscious. And I sort of started thinking about, have you ever in your life been walking down a street real confident, and then you trip over like this raised area in the sidewalk, and everybody looks and laughs, and you feel like a complete buffoon, right? But why is that? Everybody trips, everybody makes mistakes. So we just gotta like shake it off and just keep moving on and learn through the process. That's all.
Yep, thank you. I want to wrap this one up if we could, because we need to take a break. Just a real quick summary, because we're way out of time. Did we all agree that this was a leadership test?
I have a question there. When we say
Yes.
leadership test, does that mean test for the leadership or test on how the members will choose the leader?
A
both.
test for us in accepting what is done.
Accepting what is
We have a
done.
leadership put in place. Do we trust it? Or do we think it could have been done better? Do we think that this one should have been here? Or do we trust God's providence? Do we trust that it's God's providence leading, that this person chooses his friends? So do we agree it's a leadership test?
A leadership test as in who we choose as a leader. That we accept them. That we accept the leader that's been put in place.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So we
I-
see this as a leadership test, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Or members. Okay. So as a member,
Yeah.
you look at this is when the way he pointed it out, it's done in an unrighteous manner. Do we like the outcome?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if we like the outcome, then we come over to this place. How are the leaders selected? Are we happy with the outcome?
I am.
Yes.
I think that's not a question I'm asking you to answer here loud. I think that's a question we need to ask ourselves. If we were able to see this as providence, then are we able to see the other where we're at today as providence and understand that there's a difference between the individual and the institution?
I never questioned the leadership. It never occurred to me to even question the leadership until all this came up. And then I
Many
thought
people are,
maybe
because otherwise
something's,
it wouldn't be a topic.
yeah, but I thought maybe something's wrong with me, but I just accepted that we were being controlled by God. And so then, anyway.
So if we had to summarize what we did so far anyways, based on what he talked about, we didn't get to this one. But we were looking at leadership and then looking at teachers teaching, and we didn't get to the Nethinims. Maybe we can work on that another time. But we did see that, if you take what the example that was given, this was a question by a member. The example that was given, what about Martha? You know, she's doing other things, and doesn't teach. And if he said, I don't know if I heard him say the 20%, 80%, somebody else mentioned that, so I'm assuming that that was correct. I don't remember hearing him say that, but he may have, and I might have missed it. So if we take that 20% of them, only 20% of the people are teaching, and he's equating that to Mary doing the needful things and Martha doing the unimportant things, then we put the 80% here. So we're I think, which is questions we need to ask our own selves, where we fit in these studies, where we fit in these studies. So yeah, do we accept Moses and Aaron or Korah, Dathan, and Abiram? Is that what you meant by the other one? Abiram, I think was his name. So let's go ahead and close in prayer. We'll take a break. And then we're going to come back and continue our review on Islam. If I could have somebody, hello, Gina, would you close us in prayer?